Hi, welcome to Consider This, Simplifying the COVID-19 Conversation. On behalf of myself, Marianne McDowell, and my co-host, Heidi Bidinger, I hope you join us this Monday to talk about masks, distancing, and public health with our guests, Dr. Mark Fox, David Layton, and Mark McCready. Since we're going to be talking about masks and distancing, I thought I'd give you a little background about the transmission of the SARS-CoV-2 virus so that you can understand why these mitigation measures are necessary. So specifically, we're going to be talking about airborne or aerosol virus versus droplets. So imagine an individual sneezes or coughs, and when you do this, you release water droplets or water particles into the air, and then they can transverse over a distance and actually land in the mucosal surfaces of another individual, their mouth, nose, and eyes. And we call this splash and spray transmission, if you will. But not all of the particles will stay in the air, and many of them actually fall out onto the surfaces below. And if they land on, say, a table or someplace where you'll be putting your hands, we would call these fomites. And these fomites actually contain infectious virus. And that's why it's important that we disinfect surfaces and wash our hands. These fomites can stay on the surfaces for quite some time. So this particular table I've modified from a research article, Riddle et al., and I posted that in the additional resources if you're interested in reading it. So what they did was they took infectious SARS-CoV-2 virus, about the amount that you would think that's in a pretty ill person that's infectious, and put it on different materials. And then they checked those materials daily, up to a month, basically, and looked for infectious virus. And then they calculated how much time it took to have a 90% reduction. And while in some cases, at this particular temperature in Fahrenheit, they could actually detect infectious virus over 21 days. I think it could have been even a month. But really, by the time you get a 90% reduction, it might not be that infectious. It's hard to say exactly, but that the virus level is lower, even though it's still infectious. And in this case, the virus, you can have infectious virus anywhere from 5 to 10 days, and a person could possibly get infected. When it's a little hotter, the temperature itself been in the summer, the virus is still infectious and around for a few days, 1 to 4 days. And the hotter you go, the shorter time it remains infectious. And so at 104 degrees, it was more like about 5 to 10 hours. So the bottom line of the story is continue to wash your hands, don't touch your mouth, and disinfect surfaces. So now the amount of virus that stays in the air, or the amount of particles, excuse me, it doesn't matter if there's virus there or not, that stays in the air, depends on the particle size. So the larger the particles are, the quicker they fall out of the air. And when a person coughs or sneezes, those particle size can differ quite a bit, from zero point 0.1 microns or micrometers all the way up to 1,000 microns. So 1,000 microns or micrometers is 1 millimeter. So you can actually see that. And to give you some idea of how much virus might be in one of those particles, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is approximately 0.1 microns. So in the smaller particle size, you would have 6 viruses. In the large size, you could have up to 10,000 viruses. Now we know that humans can inhale particle sizes, but really 100 microns or less. So these really larger ones, more likely we're not going to be inhaling into our respiratory tract. The range of particle size from 10 to 100 microns are considered droplets. And those droplets can travel about 6 feet. And so this is why we have the 6 feet distancing, social distancing that we're all trying to follow. Depending on the droplet size will dictate how long it stays within that air, in that air stream, if you will. And so larger ones can fall down to surfaces in less than a minute, 15 to 20 microns, 1 to 5 minutes. And these smaller droplets can stay in the air for up to 10 minutes. Now, this is in a situation where there's no airflow and all the conditions are controlled. And we know that lots of different things can affect the time or the distance these droplets travel, including the humidity, the initial velocity. So if you have a really large sneeze or a small one, can dictate how far it can go. And airflow can also affect it. So imagine you had a fan blowing in one direction here, the droplets could travel a little bit farther. Or if the air was quite turbulent, it might not travel farther, but the droplets could stay up in that airstream for a longer period of time. Now, particles that are less than 5 microns are considered aerosols, and they're still large enough to contain virus, and they can float in the air for 1 to 2 hours, for quite a while. And even when we're talking, we're releasing aerosols. And they can stay in the air for longer, but they can also travel quite a bit farther. And they can travel through ventilation, doors, etc. So you can imagine that this could be considered more infectious because it's just around for longer. So not only is it around for longer, but it travels in the body to different places. So those larger droplets will get caught in the nose hairs, the mucus, the cilia, and the smaller the particle is, the further the particle travels down the respiratory tract. And these 10 to micron droplets can really travel down the really upper respiratory tract and gain infection there. But it's these aerosol particles that are more concerning because they can actually travel deep into the lung and start an infection deep into these microscopic sacs where we exchange oxygen. So can't wait to see you on Monday. I want to remind you that if you have questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at consider@nd.edu. Bye for now. Thanks.